Haiti borders with the Dominican.
Her name is Serena Buffalino. They call her Mrs. B, and her class always begins with a pledge.
Something local, something global. Haiti.
They're words that carry weight here. Helping yourself means helping others, giving back, here and a world away in Haiti.
And nobody's helping them, except for people like us.
It was through her the class learned of Haiti, of the nearly 1 million orphans, many with no school, no support, no Mrs. B in their lives.
They could not wrap their head around that.
Mrs. B's students are among Toronto's most at risk. Their challenges vary from emotional and behavioral difficulties to learning disabilities. Their trauma is so severe they can't function in a regular school setting, and we aren't allowed to show most of their classmates.
For most of the kids, most of society has turned them away. And in this classroom, they're accepted. They're accepted no matter what for who they are.
Take Yolanda. She came here last year so burdened and withdrawn, she would often fall silent, sometimes for days on end. It was, she says, Mrs. B's patience, her quiet encouragement, that saved her.
She actually saves people's lives from dangers.
And perhaps that's why these marginalized kids feel such a kinship with the orphans of Haiti, and why they were moved to act.
And so when Yolanda and Jackie and Patrick said, well, Miss B, we need to build them a school.
Build a school, no easy task. They started out raising money. They sold samosas, washed cars, screened movies, you name it. And in just a few months, this little class raised $20,000. So much, it's not just a one-room schoolhouse they can build, but a full 3-story school. And so Mrs. B set off on a journey she'd dreamed of, up into the dusty mountains above Port-au-Prince to a town called Canaan. It's home to thousands of earthquake refugees who live with no running water, no electricity, and no school, until now. The first step was a temporary school. It's up and running. 53 students already in uniform. The permanent school for 250 is growing from its foundations.
It makes me want to cry because she just makes me feel so awed, and I'm very proud of her.
All of this because of a handful of students back in Canada and Mrs. B, the teacher who believed in them.
These are for you.
At another fundraiser, a special tribute to the students, accepted by someone who, without Mrs. B, might not be here.
They believe in me and I believe in them, and together we not only change our lives, but we change the world around us.
For inspiring great things and seeing the potential in everyone, Serena Buffalino is this week's Everyday Hero.
This is the reason why I do what I do, is because of Yolanda and all the...
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. For a second there, it was like, oh yeah, why can't I? Well, welcome. You know what? Modern technology. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Time to Shine Happiness Show. My co-host, my good friend and buddy and co-host, Barb Beckley, is not going to be able to be with us this morning. But you know what? The show must go on. And so I am so excited to introduce you to Dr. Amanda Hellman. I have to say, we met on LinkedIn. And what struck me about when we first was that she's a mindset coach, and that's one of the things that I work with is mindset also. But you know what the thing is? We all work at it from a slightly different angle. And that's why I just truly believe that it is so important to bring other points of view about mindset and changing mindset. And because don't you think, Amanda, that it all just that's where everything starts?
Absolutely. It all starts with our brain and our beliefs about ourselves and our perceptions about ourselves based on what others input as well.
Right. Yeah. This morning, and just the things that you want in your life that, and like this morning, I was, like my grandchildren, we all live together. And this morning, my granddaughter was downstairs early and, because she goes to school early and she was sitting there with a wet head. And I said to her, I said, gee, you know what? Gee, your head's wet. Are you going to go blow dry it? And she went, no, it's okay. And I said, well, I have to tell you, I said, your great grandmother, I'm your grandmother, but your great grandmother would be having a fit right now because that was one of the things when I was growing up. That was a rule. You never went out of the house with a wet head, especially in the winter. In the summer, you're swimming, okay, fine. But you never go out with a wet head. And it just was like, oh, yeah, I wonder, like they didn't really know my mom, but my dad, I only lost him 2 years ago. And I said, do you remember your great grandpa? She said, well, yeah, of course I do. We only lost him because she's 12. She had him and we would see him. And it was just that little mindset shift that, oh, right.
I love it. Yeah.
But one of the things that it brought up for me, and this was where the bit of the mind shift came from, is that, you know what? That's one of the things that I want in my life. So I'm going to continue to do the things that will help me to get there, is that I want my great grandchildren to know me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leave a legacy, Barbara, leave a legacy of how to impact the next generation and generations to come.
Right, right. And so it was just amazing. It was just such a, oh, right. That's one of the things I want. So tell us about you. How did you become, how did you, tell us your story.
Sure. First of all, I just want to thank you, both Barbaras, for having me on your Time to Shine Happiness show. I'm really honored to have met you as well, Barbara. And so my name is Dr. Amanda Hellman. I am an author and mindset and really breakthrough coach, really to break through some of those old mindsets to new. And I'm also a speaker. And I spent over 20 years in education, special education, currently really in the field of mental health and counseling, psychology, and leadership. So I like to blend those three fields and make them really practical for people to digest and realize that if we really think about the whole picture, we can really bring it down and make it more manageable and do practical things in our daily communication life. It's really all about communication.
Right. Well, just more doable. That's what I liked about the things that we've talked about.
Yeah, simple. So and recently I have a book out based on my journey out of complex trauma. And so the brain likes simple. So that's what I said. We say complex and our brain goes, woo. And complex trauma is certainly very multidynamic and just a lot going on there. But there are simple things we can do each day. And I'm a living example of how you can shift your mind and you can come out of it and you can still succeed.
Right. So let's start there. Where, because we have people that are just now, just coming into knowing that our mindset and how our brain works is so important. Yeah. One of the things for me is so often some of the coaches so many people talk about it. Yeah. But within our world, yes, we do talk about mindset, but there is a whole world out there now, especially as the internet is growing, that have never heard the word mindset shift. they have no idea what what we're talking about. And when Barb and I, Barb Beckley, it's the hope for this show to get out into the broader world. So if somebody is just hearing you for the very first time and have never heard the word mindset shift, what would you tell them, and how would you start the thought with them?
Sure. Well, I think I take the word mindset and I would say it's setting your mind on new thinking. That's the most simple way to do it. And so what it is where we might have old thoughts that we're thinking, such as I can't do X, Y, Z. It may be learning why, what am I afraid of when I'm doing that? And then believing that the actual truth, which is I can do X, Y, Z. So that would be my most simplified way of explaining what happens when we do actually shift our mind, and then your actions follow once you do shift that.
Right. That's one of the things for me when I first realized that when I woke up, like when I lost my husband and woke up from my widow's fog, it was like I had no idea who I was and had no idea how to find out. But that started the journey. It was having that one, hey, well, how do I find out? Well, I was introduced to coaching because I realized that, oh, brother, I have no idea how to do this. It's like a kid that wants to learn how to play hockey. Get a coach. Like my boys, when they were young, they wanted to learn how to be really good bowlers, and they both are very good bowlers. But I got them a coach. Well, why? And the most important thing in our life is our life. Why would we think we can go through without having a coach?
Absolutely.
I mean, once I made that realization, it was like, oh yeah, I need help. And so share with us, what's the difference? Like, how do you, like, I know how I explain the difference, but how do you explain the difference between therapy? And I'm not knocking therapy. There are a lot of people out there that we really need to have therapy. But what's the difference between therapy and coaching and like what we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm actually doing both right now,
Okay.
coach, and I also getting my master's for counseling. And I would say the therapy is, again, there's different theories to practice. There may be some specific interventions that the therapists use. And technically, well, legally, you have to be a licensed professional counselor to actually go into that therapy. And that might be getting to deeper roots with the clients, or maybe again, more intensive treatments depending on the actual person. And coaching is more of that empowerment, right? It might be goal setting. It may be really helping the person look at some of their blind spots so they can expand, whether it be in business, whether it be with family. And it does have a lot of reflections in your mirror, I would say, where the person may not realize where they are, what's actually holding them back. But it's different than the therapy, because the therapist and the client relationship a lot of times is focused only on the client. But when you have the coaching, there is a little bit more leeway where you can actually have that relation building in a different, unique way. And so that would be some of my ways to describe the differences. That therapy, again, is more that different treatment plans, and more, again, looking at some stabilization for some patients, versus the coaching where you're at a different place where there might be a lot of the stabilization, but now you're looking to enhance yourself, and you may not need some of those more intensive mental health supports.
Right. Yeah. It is so nice to hear somebody else explain it who has done both. Like for me, it was always that therapy is about what's already happened and the things that you have to deal with. And then coaching for me is, okay, now we have to not make light of what happened, but now where do you want to go from here? What have all of those things taught you? And now how do we take those learnings and put them out going forward? And I think once I made those, rather than being so wrapped up in all of the, because I don't you find that most people, I know I always did and still do on occasion, I looked at all of the negative things that I did in my life. And so many of them, has kids, and some of the things that I learned as a kid, that were like, well, gee, that doesn't help me now. So why am I still dwelling on that? But how to shift that. And I think that was one of the biggest things, was that, okay, why am I still thinking that? It's not helping. So what can I do instead? So what would you say to somebody is that like, hey, I've been dealing with this for 20 years.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I actually had something like that happen recently where I was working with someone that was in therapy for 20 years. And this is our second session, and we actually got to the root of what was going on with her. And she's like, I've spent 20 years trying to figure out the precise thing. And we went through the whole session looking at different areas, and she was like floored, and was able then to move forward after that to actually communicate with people. But we got to and really for her, for example, just generally was disappointment. She had no idea. And she's like, I've gone for 20 years. I never realized in me, I was perceiving so much of what was happening to me in the lens of disappointment. So we went through different mind processes, but that was what happened. And so she actually started to shift her language and realizing, how can I shift my dynamics of what I'm seeing and what I'm doing, because she was operating out of disappointment, Barbara. So that was a really amazing time to see that happen with her.
Right. And so one of the things, I'll tell on myself, one of the things I was doing, I was going to be doing an event, and I was just feeling, and I could feel the anxiety just, and I was like, just getting myself all worked up about it. This wasn't that long ago. And it was like, okay, Barbara, let's get real here. What is it that about this event that's coming up, that why are you getting so upset within yourself? And it was like, oh, Barbara, what was underneath what I was feeling, that anxiety? And I realized in that moment, as I sat down and really thought about it, it was like, well, what if I was like the scared little girl who thinks nobody's going to come to her party? And it was like, oh, for heaven's sakes, Barbara, you've got people signed up for this thing. Of course there's going to be people there. But it was just that. And looking back, it was like, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. Where did it come from? It was just that fear that, what if nobody shows up? Well, will I die if nobody shows? If that had happened, would I have folded up my tents and died on the spot? Well, no. You would have just said, well, okay, fine. Maybe I needed to do more marketing, or to do, invite more people, or whatever. But right at that moment, I was like almost a basket case with anxiety of fear and ready to cancel the event. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how often have we done that in littler things and in other things?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Wow. So, there was, brother, now I need to see, now I was going to ask you a question and it just left me. Oh, well, totally left me. No clue. Anyways, all right. So let's go on to another example of one of the things this morning. I was doing, well, actually, it was yesterday, and I was doing another situation. I had another situation and could not, and there was a group of us, and they were saying, Barb, just click the red button. And I'm starting to get so upset with myself because we're on Zoom. Mm-hmm. There was whole bunches of other people on the call, and I'm sitting there going, all right, Barbara, what is wrong with you? Why can't you find the red button? And I was just getting so upset with myself, and then finally I said, you know what? I am so sorry. What red button? Mm-hmm. What's the red button? And the other, it was like, well, the red button is on the very first page. Okay, so now, Barbara, what's wrong with you that you can't find the red button? The thing is that I had to go back and say, and then finally admit that, okay, I cannot find this red button. What does the red button look like? Mm-hmm. And so he said, "Oh, hold on, Barb." And he went up and he said, "This is what it looks like." And I said, "Okay, now I know what the problem is." He said, "What?" I said, "The button on my screen is green."
Uh,
And because I had no idea what it looked like, how often have we done that? One person sees it one way, the other person sees it the other way, and they can't understand why aren't you getting this?
mhm.
But how often do we do that with ourselves?
It's very true. Yeah.
I was getting so upset. What is wrong with you, Barbara, that you cannot find this red button? Well, it's because my button was green. And I didn't know what it looked like.
Yeah.
And so it was just a really good lesson for me that, you know what, let's dig deeper.
Yeah.
Why am I not finding the red button? And so what can we do to apply that into our every life? Anyways, so now I want to respect our time. Tell us about the fun things that are coming up for you.
Sure, absolutely. So, is it?
I know you mentioned your book. So
Yes.
yes.
So can I share the title? Actually, I have the book here. Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
Tell us about everything you're doing and how.
Okay, so I'll show you my book, if that's okay. So this is actually called Silent No Longer, Finding My Voice After Complex Trauma, and it's available on Amazon. It launched on November 26th and was #1 in a lot of categories. I was really honored. And it's also available on, it's squaretreepublishing.com. And that's my publisher, so you can actually get it through there, and it goes to Amazon, but straight away you can actually just go to Amazon. It's available via Kindle, or
that's what I was just going to ask.
Yes, or hard copy.
Kindle?
Yep, and in 2022, hopefully audio. So that's one of the new things that are really exciting and big feat for me. A lot of mindset, Barbara. You'd think of that, and I'm on the cover. That was a big mindset shift to know that it's going to help people and really have the mindset to know it's going, like you said, leaving a legacy. Right. And unlocking and breaking people out of that trauma is my passion. And so that's
putting yourself out there. That's huge. Something a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, especially that topic, because you want to honor everybody, and that was my heart. And so, along with that, and we've talked about this, I do coaching. So I am a coach. I do author mindset and breakthrough coaching, and I do that with communication and relationships for people so that they can move from one place to another. And I'm passionate about it. So those are things that I do, and you can find me at amandahellman.com. But those are the things that are up in my life right now. Just the book and really supporting people and empowering people is something I love to do, as well as hear their stories.
Do you work with couples?
Yes, actually, it was interesting. Last year I launched in December, and my first 4 coaches, I had done a challenge on confidence, and I had them for months, and we became great friends. In fact, after 2 months of coaching, she invited me to her renewal vows in Puerto Rico. But and then she's like, "Hey, can you do counseling, just not counseling, but can you do coaching with me and my husband?" So I did. I ended up doing additional sessions. So I do work with couples as well. And I didn't know I would be working with couples as well, but it is something that I actually do and I love doing. And it was well received by them.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. That is so cool. Just because one of my favorite sayings is that we can't do life on our own. Mm-hmm. We have to do it with the people around us.
Absolutely.
And that is what is such the fun thing, is when you can, oh yeah, that's why you do that, and just to work with them. And so cool beans. So now, and I still don't remember, I was going to ask you something and I still don't remember what it was. So obviously we'll just go on, and because that's how life rolls, and we just accept. I guess that is the learning session of right this second, is just go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, Barbara, is it okay for me to share a little bit more about Traumaplicity? Is that all right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Tell us about everything.
Yeah. So Traumaplicity, so that's a couple things. I have Traumaplicity talk show on my Facebook page. I have an Amanda Hellman author and Facebook page, and I have a weekly guest every Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's about 20-30 minutes, and they get to share their story, and they share 3 to 5 simple steps about what they've gone through and overcame. And I also then have them encourage the audience. But what's interesting is I have a lot of people with different stories, and it's very powerful to hear them actually speak it. But that also tags into, it's called Traumaplicity course. So trauma plus simplicity is Traumaplicity. I came up with it. It was a really interesting thing, but the brain, like I said, it doesn't want it, right? I was first going to be Traumaplexity, but that's more complex. So it's looking at courses with what is the brain, how does trauma impact our brain, looking at areas of resiliency, how do we overcome sexual trauma, how do we communicate this, and types and combinations of trauma. So I have different courses, a beginner course right now, and we'll continue on that. So that's something that is always available. It's either live or there's a course online that people can get. And I'm passionate about really helping impact the community. So I wanted to share that as well.
Oh, that is amazing. In fact, I'll have to put you in touch with a friend of mine that she works with trauma.
Okay.
And just because you know what, so many of us,
Yes.
we don't think of it as trauma until something comes up, because we like I tended to be an emotion stuffer, and we would just keep stuffing it down, and then all of a sudden it comes out somewhere else in our life.
Yeah.
Don't you find that to be absolutely the truth?
I do. And when you said about the emotion stuffer, isn't it interesting? Because in families, like, we love to get together, but we call it comfort food. Because when you have families, if you think about it, sometimes there's not always a healthy function in communication. So people don't know what to do. So it might be food, right, or alcohol and stuff like that. And we do, like, our interactions really tell us how we're doing, just like you said. And it really is, when we've had family after family, generation after generation, carry on that trauma or not know how to shift it, just like you were saying, it does impact all of us, and we don't even realize it. We're like, oh, I'm coping with this, or oh, like, that really triggered something in me, and we realize, wow, there's some more healing. So yeah, Barbara, that emotional stuffing thing, I think, is a family, and I think it's also a cultural, across cultures, that saying how you feel and expressing it can take it takes a lot of vulnerability, and it takes a lot of security.
Right. And just what came to my mind is that when you were talking about the generationals, how look at the generational curses that are out there. Like the Hatfields and the McCoys. The generations now still have no idea what caused the feud to begin with back in the day, and yet still people still mention the Hatfields and the McCoys as an example of feuding families.
Yeah.
And they have no idea what started it.
Yes. And it goes back to that trauma, and that's where, like, that's what it is now. Yeah, it's like but you said the generational curses, but it's like once we uproot trauma, we can go from curses to blessings and healing. And so yes, I love that you brought that up, because a lot of times it's that pain and the things that, if we don't deal with it, continues that bitter root or those roots of pain. So I love that you brought that up, Barbara, and just gave an example. And that's exactly it. That's part of this whole thing, is how can we as a society and as people admit that's hard, right? There's 8 billion people on the planet. I always say this, and 8 billion people who need counseling or coaching. Like, it's, we're all a work in progress.
Right. Exactly. And I am so grateful. I'm so grateful that on looking back, for all of the coaches that I've had, and not only just coaching, but coaching and mentoring and taking, there are so many people like yourself that there's free courses out there. Yeah. Start somewhere. And that is the biggest thing. And I love the fact that here we are, that of where people can reach out to you. If you're listening to this and you want to start somewhere free, there are so many places out there to start. And then it just gives you, like, for me, it's like starting that one little flicker of light in the dark room. Yes. We all have dark rooms in our life and in our brain. But when you can start by even just putting one flicker of light, and that's what you are, is just a flicker of light in the darkness.
That's right.
So thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on. Just so enlightening. And I would really encourage you to reach out reach out to Amanda, and because there's no shame in asking for help.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's one of the biggest things to start with.
Yes, and Barbara, you named it. Could be a whole other show is on shame, right? Because that's the thing that prevents us from actually getting healing. But yeah, today was amazing. It was great to be on here. I was really honored. Again, I always enjoy having conversations with you and talking about what we're doing and that are similar passions to empower other people.
Right. To empower, for me, is to make happiness the norm. And part of happiness is dealing with the stuff in your life. Let's have some joy. So anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We are going to be having a short show today because Barb Beckley is going to be doing some other stuff that we normally do in the next half hour. So come back next week. We have great guests coming on. Oh, no, next week we don't have a guest. Barb and I are just going to be talking about the stuff that we're doing and the things that we're going to be doing in 2022. So it's going to be an exciting show. Come join us. And again, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the show, and have an awesome, awesome day and weekend and holiday season. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye.